Hello everyone, welcome back to the class. This is module number 4, Ikigai and purpose. The definition of purpose is a motivating force in one's life, something that gives a person a sense of purpose, a reason for living. So if you really think about it, what really could be more important than that? Now within the context of this whole course and the Zen philosophy, the reason why I brought this in is because Ikigai has become really kind of popular recently. There's a book called Ikigai, The Japanese Secret to a Long and Happy Life. So this is really the book that got me interested in this. And it talks about having the intersection of what you love, what you are good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. And within those circles, there's passion, mission, profession, and vocation. And in the sweet spot in the middle of all that is Ikigai, which is your true life purpose. So as a lot of us are thinking about changing careers, and even within a particular career, am I happy? Am I fulfilled? Am I doing good for the world? These are important things to be contemplating. And even if you haven't fully made that transition yet, just to start thinking about it, you have to start somewhere, right? And so this is a seed that can be planted. And this is a concept that you can use as a framework. It's almost like a Venn diagram of circles, and right in the middle is really where your life is fully enriched and in balance. The thing that I also found interesting about this particular phrase and word is its close association with a Buddhist term that I'm very passionate about called the middle way. And I have a book right here that my original teacher and his teacher co-wrote together called Fundamental Wisdom of the Middle Way. It's very deep, thick translation of a very old Buddhist text. I'm not going to even try to pronounce it, but it goes by the MMK. And it's all about the middle way, written by a famous Buddhist scholar named Nagarjuna, and an Indian scholar. And really, for me, what this all distills down to is every moment there's an opportunity to find and discover the middle way. The balance of two polar opposites, there's a sweet spot right in the middle. It doesn't have to be all the time, every time, but it's something to strive and look for within a situation. Am I living on one extreme or the other, or is there a sweet spot right in the middle? The way that the Buddha came up with this concept is an interesting little story. So I'll share that with you all right now. So as the Buddha was on his path to becoming the Buddha, he was still Siddhartha Gautama at that time. And in my introduction to meditation mindfulness, one of the recommended readings was the book Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, where he talks about this story. But as the Buddha was on the path to enlightenment, he was dabbling with all different practices, modalities, teachers, and one of the things he was practicing at that time was extreme asceticism. And he was basically starving himself because he was trying to avoid all temptation, all desire, which he lumped food, water, shelter, all that into. And so he actually got so weak and so frail from not eating and drinking that he passed out face first in the Ganges River, and people were all rushing to work in the morning, not even noticing that someone had passed over, who would eventually become the Buddha, by the way. But one woman out of thousands saw this happen, and she got him out of the river and she gave him milk, and this rejuvenated him. This brought him back to life, essentially. And in that moment, he basically came up with the concept of the middle way, and that being on one extreme or the other is really not helpful. And so this became a fundamental teaching of Buddhist philosophy, and I think it's important for us to consider, and I think it goes nicely with the concept of Ikigai, especially in relation to one's career. And so obviously, this is something that takes a lot of patience, right? And so for myself, I've had a long, interesting career and journey to even get me to this place. And one of the things I find interesting is that this is not something that's taught specifically in Western culture, right, or in school. We are all sort of taught to follow the system, follow the path, doctor, lawyer, teacher, all these standard professions, which there's nothing wrong with that. But there's millions and millions of people that those professions don't speak to, that it doesn't align with them. And so what do those people do that still want to find their purpose in life? Some are fortunate enough that they just stumble into it, like musician or an artist maybe, that they're just such a calling in their soul, in their gut, that they have to pursue it, and they do everything in their power to pursue that path. Other people like myself was interested in sociology and people and psychology, and ended up in business and entrepreneurship, and it led me onto Shark Tank, and then I moved out to California, and then I found Zen and yoga, and now I'm teaching it. And it's so the idea is that we're being gentle with ourselves, we're being calm, we're being patient, we're taking into consideration our strengths, our weaknesses, what does society need, what could I be paid for that could serve myself financially and my family. But the idea is that we want to be able to create sustainability within our lives, so we're not jumping right from career to career. And then when we're in a career, this really ties back to a concept that is really popular right now. It's kind of in vogue. It's a lot talked about in my courses, in the media, which is work-life balance. And so a lot of people struggle with that, right? It's like people put too much emphasis and time into their careers, then they get home and they have no energy for their wife, their children, their spouses, and they just feel burnt out. Once again, we're going back to some of the problems when we don't have this balance. So I feel like this is an opportunity to pause, to reset, to contemplate, and to think about what you want to do with your life that benefits you and society at large. So as we've done in the other modules, some of the problems that people are experiencing who don't have purpose, who don't have balance: burnout, mental health challenges, decreased productivity, lack of fulfillment, lack of creativity, sometimes poor relationships, and lack of motivation. So these are just some common things that happen when we're out of alignment, when we're out of purpose. When we have purpose, we can have increased resilience, greater productivity, increased well-being, better work-life balance. We could be more aligned with our own personal values, and then in turn, we could be a bigger contribution to society at large. So I think you could see that this is a worthwhile pursuit. It seems to fit the whole idea of Zen, right? And sort of the very simplistic approach to life, but also how profound it is. And again, if we tie it back to Zazen, which is where we start all this from, this idea of the middle way is represented even in the posture, right, with the way that we're sitting. We're in alignment. Our ears and shoulders, our nose, our belly button, our arms, our hands, our legs, our chin tucked. There's a seriousness, yet we could laugh at ourselves during Zazen when we have a thought that we find humorous and not to be taken too seriously. There's a dichotomy that we need to hold, gently in our palms, where we can be serious and we can have fun, we can make money and we can give back, we can have purpose, and we could just do work for the sake of doing work. So I encourage you all that are taking this class, obviously if you're taking this, there's some interest in being a little bit more productive, a little bit more mindful, finding what it is that is your best qualities and traits that could lead to a life filled with purpose. So hopefully this will help you get you on your path. And thanks again for attending. We'll see you in the next module.